I want to prove that business can be a force for good in the world, and that people can manage themselves, that we're not all just motivated by greed. In June this year, Riverford Organic Farmers will become employee owned after 30 years of family ownership, principally my ownership, and quite a lot of people are asking why. So what normally happens with a business like mine, the founder gets to be 50, 60 and they think, oh my God, what am I going to do? What happens when it gets to be the size that Riverford is today is that it gets sold, So the business ends up being owned by a venture capitalist, or perhaps by a global corporation, or if it's really big, maybe it gets floated on the stock exchange. And the people who then own the business are completely separated from the people who work in the business. And that just seems all wrong to me. Conventional forms of ownership really only value the measurable and what can normally be measured in monetary terms. And there's so much of what goes on at work, our decision making and whatever, can't be measured. The assumption that people respond only to very crude financial incentives and so on is just ludicrous. Mostly people are motivated by actually a desire to do something well and to get better at it, to learn skills. They're motivated by sort of shared sense of purpose. And if you just reward what you can measure, which is self-interest and greed on the whole, that's what you'll get. As I learned in my very early days, if you pay people by the sack to fill up carrots, don't be surprised if you find in the bottom of the sack it's all full up of stones and mud, because actually you're just rewarding them for filling up the sacks. I mean, if you involve them in the business and all sharing in the profits, well, people aren't going to put stones in the mud in the bottom. So I guess in very simplistic terms, that's what we're trying to achieve. Just before the recession, when Abel and Cole, who we've more or less been neck and neck with for years, Keith Abel sold the business to a bunch of venture capitalists, and I was getting phone calls virtually every day from the guys in the city wanting to lubricate my movement into retirement to maximize the value of my business, to sell it. And it's just as well none of them came to see me, because I think I might have punched one of them. I mean, it's a world that I just really have so little time for. All they can measure a business is its profit, its assets, its return on capital. And to sell my business, this thing that I'd created, that I'd poured my life 30 years of work in, to sell it to one of those bastards, it would feel like selling, one of my children into prostitution. And you know what? I was never going to do it. I just knew instantly that I was never going to do that, and I made a very public statement that I was never going to do it. And so now I've got to live up to it, haven't I? Most people are better, more generous, less greedy, and more willing to work collectively for shared goals. All those wonderful things which we can do as human beings, which people don't get a chance to do within most conventionally run organisations, because they assume, the national health, teachers, so on, the assumption is that people are only working on personal greed. It's just so completely ridiculous, so wasteful, it drives me nuts. Short-term capitalism is not a law of nature, it's not an inevitability. It's actually a construct with very dodgy foundations, because it's based on assumptions about human nature which are patently untrue. There's no amount of research to show that greed is a very poor motivator. So why we carry on assuming that that's the only way you can organise people is completely ridiculous. You can treat your staff really well, you can treat your customers respectfully, you can care for the environment and still be successful. I want to prove that business can be a force for good in the world. Am I worried that the staff will make crazy decisions and go off and do really stupid things? No, I think it's much more likely that I'm going to make a really crazy decision and go off and do something stupid. My biggest worry about employee ownership actually is that we do nothing. We absolutely have to stay dynamic and creative and constantly coming up with new ideas and retain that absolute determination that whatever we do today, we're going to do it a little bit better tomorrow. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could have 600 people who are always thinking like that, rather than a board of 8 or a senior management team of 30? My hope is that we can give hope by demonstrating that a more optimistic interpretation of human nature can be commercially successful. And if we're successful, I hope that other people will follow.